I'm here with Fred. Fred and I have known each other for 40 years, going on going on 50 years, 45 and some years. Um,
1977.
76 probably.
76.
76.
76.
Um, we met in film school. He knew all about film then. I didn't know anything about it.
But
I
Bill showed up with Coors beer when Coors beer was still cool.
right. I'm not sure it was ever cool, but maybe it was just somewhat more exotic. It wasn't
It was
available.
exotic, right? It was.
It was.
It had to be fresh, so it was exotic.
It wasn't available east of the Mississippi, so, or even the Rockies, probably. Yeah, so we've known each other all that time, and we've stayed friendly. I've been through the many women he's wooed and been with, and I haven't. I mean, I've been around them all.
And ditto for me too.
Um,
And we're only 5 blocks away from the apartment you gave me.
yeah, oh, that's right. I bequeathed an apartment to him that had some legacy. It had story, and it was a shot. No, it wasn't a shotgun. What was it called?
Yeah, it was shotgun.
It was shotgun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it had, and of course, the one that everybody still talks about to this day is the bathtub in the kitchen.
Right. I don't think you ever were a real New Yorker unless you lived in a place that had that. So everybody else is bogus. You really can't. But also, I mean, that apartment did have, the toilet was kind of unique in it. It was
Yeah,
it was
pretty,
shoehorned in right next to the door
Right.
because that was originally what you would call a cold water flat, and there were no private bathrooms in it. They added the water afterwards.
The one I love is we had lived in a crummy apartment. I had lived in a crummy apartment in Hyde Park in Chicago, but my roommate had started taking off the paint and discovered mahogany underneath. So I thought, oh, we could do this in any apartment. and, and and I started taking the paint off, and all I found was like this weird, unidentifiable ooze underneath the paint. And I told Bill, and Bill said, yes, I know about that. And to this day, we'll never know what that ooze was.
But yeah, so it was a good apartment. It was,
Bill liked to throw firecrackers down the air shaft.
I don't remember that, but I do remember, I remember, it was a walk-up, of course, and we were on the top floor. And I do remember carrying my bicycle up those, and very tight, had to be almost vertical to come up and down,
Right.
because you wouldn't leave your bicycle locked up for a moment in those years.
Right.
So, and I used my bicycle all the time, so I can remember coming up and down those stairs 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a day, just to get out and, that was just the way it worked. And I don't believe there was a bell that you couldn't to let someone in. You had to throw the keys out the window. No?
I don't remember that.
But you never had any visitors. That's why.
Bill's always had this sort of humor.
Anyway, so Fred has had a storied career in the world of academia. Whenever I don't understand anything about academia, which is pretty much all the time, I can go to Fred for some comfort or some elucidation. But yeah, he's an egghead. He's got multiple degrees and written many scholarly books and travels, gets sabbaticals and gets, what do you call it when you swap trading places where you get a...
I don't know what to call it, but that was a nice deal. A German professor and I swapped courses. That was very nice. And it's always a nice delight to teach in Europe, which I've managed to do in Germany and in Finland.
So when I came to Columbia Film School, it was, I was coming from, I had been working in the theater, in the dance world, and in rock and roll. So I was coming from a more or less rock and roll place. And that was in the mid-'70s when rock and roll for the most part was pretty bloated. You know, there would be Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which was doing classical music. People would travel with string orchestras. The shows got bigger and bigger. The shows got bigger, which my company that I was working with, we were involved in that, but the music just got more and more bloated. And there was a reaction to that. And Fred, believe it or not, is the person who introduced me to the Ramones.
Oh my God. I didn't know that.
Are you ready to talk about that, Fred?
Well, I certainly remembered a film we made, and I said, let's use Blitzkrieg Bop as the ending.
Well, but even before that, I know Fred had a friend who's
Oh,
kind of quite
Mr.
legendary in the rock and roll promotion world, if you will, from the other side.
Well, there was Ira Robbins, who did the magazine Trouser Press, which caught the second British wave perfectly. So he managed to build that into a national circulation. So he was a big one, and yeah, and lots of given that we were living on 16th Street, CBGB's was pretty handy. So that was good.
Well,
But Bill, of course, is being a little bit falsely modest. He's the one who took me backstage to Bruce Springsteen.
I wasted that on you when I could have gotten a girl backstage. Oh, Fred, how foolish of me.
Well, you made me. Let's see. How did you?
Oh my
get,
God!
Get retribution from that. You took me backstage to a Demi Reynolds performance.
Oh,
she was a
that's
trip.
True. That
was a
was
trip.
That's right.
Yeah, she was fun.
You know, this is when giants walked the earth,
Yes, very good.
or crawled the earth. Yeah, it's interesting how, I've been.
It's true. Now I remember. Yes, we saw Tommy Verlaine. What, he died a year ago? 2 years ago?
That was last year.
Yeah, last year. And yeah, I had people who already knew about that he was somebody that you had to seek out and talk to. So
Well,
yeah.
that was. I mean, of the shows that I saw at CBGB's, I would say the one that has probably stuck with me the most is television. Seeing television, television back in the day live, because what they were doing was so different from what anybody. It was still considered punk or whatever.
Yeah.
It was still part of that CBGB scene, but it was. First of all, it was a level of competence, if you will, a level of musicality and technical proficiency that the other bands did not strive for.
Though I think I saw them with Talking Heads, and I thought Talking Heads was pretty musical also.
Talking Heads was musical, but the idea of the kind of improvisational and the interlinking of the guitars, television in some ways had more to do with. Maybe it wasn't quite as improvisational as it would appear, but it was more like seeing the Grateful Dead, a connection there in terms of where is this going and the interplay of instruments.
Right.
But yeah, no, those were New York City in those days. It's very hard to sit in New York City as we're doing right now, and to compare it to that time.
We were just talking half an hour ago about how just a block away from here, Bill put up the sign for the record shop that lasted for a couple of years. So every time you walked down 8th Avenue, there was a piece of Bill up on that signpost.
Well, things like that could thrive in the New York City. New York City, this was the era. It was not long after the famous headline, Ford to NY, drop dead.
Dead.
Four lines of 4 characters each. The city was bankrupt and stuff was cheap, and my first apartments were $100 a month for a number of years. That's how much I spent.
You're too high. The apartment you gave me was $90 a month.
Was it 90? So you could make $85 a week and live in New York and not feel that you were. And my first job was $85 a week, and not feel like you were suffering in any way. So when life is cheap like that, real estate is cheap, and people can take chances on the real estate. or take chances as an artist. They could get a piece of property that was, worthless or not worthless, but very inexpensive to keep, and they could experiment. The loft that I had downtown in Tribeca, before there was a Tribeca, was
I remember that.
that was north on Duane Street. That was 4,000 square feet. Plus we had the roof for $400.
Oh my God.
It's kind of impossible to imagine that, and that was a legitimate place.
And so Bill gave me the apartment on 16th Street, and it turned out that was a real scene. There was John McCarthy was next door. He was a wannabe. I think he was inspired by Belushi. He kept coming back from failed auditions for Saturday Night Live, but he was a character. It was Paul Delaney, who was across the street, and he was a video guy at St. Vincent's Hospital. He would do all the psychiatric stuff, and between them, it was just the biggest piece of Irish ballyhoo that I've ever could hope to be part of. That was fun.
Well, when I lived on 16th Street, which of course, the reason I left 16th Street, the reason I got 16th Street is that it was time for me to leave the loft. I was going back to college, and I couldn't concentrate in the loft. And when I went to rent the loft, a very good friend of mine, a dancer named Barbara Rohn, whose apartment that was before I moved into it, she was coming up the elevator, and as I was coming down, I said, Barbara, I'm taking it, but I promise I'll give it to you when I'm ready to leave. So what happened is I went back to college after years of working I knew I wanted to go back to college, and I could not concentrate in that loft. My energy just too dissipated. So I traded that loft for Barbara's apartment, which was on 16th Street with basically a one bedroom, hardly a one, whatever, a broken down. It was a one bedroom.
Right.
And but when I was there in that apartment, I was basically going to school, although in the summer doing rock and roll, and I didn't know anybody in the neighborhood. I had no contact with anybody there, so I didn't meet neighbors or anything. It was up and down in the silo. Anyway, so let's shall we fast forward, or shall we
we can
sit here and sound like old farts for another?
We can milk 16th Street a little bit more. Yeah. I mean, and you didn't want to know the neighbors. The first time I got robbed, and I begged the policeman to, can I look at the mug books? I really got a good look at them. Can I look at the mug books? And they said, you don't want to do that. And but anyhow, I persisted, so they let me look at the mug books. And sure enough, the reason I didn't want to do it was everybody on the street was in that mug book.
Yeah.
Except the people who robbed me, so I never did catch the robber.
I mean, that was a real Puerto Rican Spanish neighborhood. That was the bodega down at the bottom of the stairs was, and also 8th Avenue was very interesting at that point when there were still these Cubano, the Chinese Cubano restaurants there, like Tazo de Oro and others, where these were people who had escaped communism twice in their life. They had run from it twice. They were Chinese people who, when Mao was taking over, they left China and went to Cuba. And then when Castro took over in Cuba and it became communist, then they left and they came to New York. So that's why you would have these comidas chinas y criollas.
Y criollas.
So it would mix Spanish food or Puerto Ricans or Cuban style food with Chinese food. The Chinese by that point had been pretty much forgotten. I mean, it was not what you would consider Chinese food by today's standards. No, let's put it this way: no person younger than us or our age would take a picture of that meal before eating it.
Well, those oxtail stews, they were pretty good. I'm sure.
The criolla stuff was very legitimate. It was the Chinese. By the time the Chinese had gone through the Cuban, it was kind of mushy stuff. Chinese food was not beautiful in those days.
So let's fast forward.
So, let's forward. Yeah, so anyway, so now here we are in 2023, and, Fred has been teaching. He comes from a family of scholars, and he got into the New York City, the New York City College, the New York College world, and has been a professor at Brooklyn College for all these times. And he's about to go on half-time, and then,
retire.
He's got one foot out the door.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what has teaching taught you, Fred? What can you take away from teaching back then, now, and all of that?
Well, teaching is never instant gratification. It's always, let's see if I can just plant these things, and maybe later they'll develop, but you'll never get to see the development. And I realized in hindsight, I pulled out on my teachers. They planted things in my brain, but they never got to see what the results were. So I just hope that's true of my students, though they've been a mixed lot. And what's also fascinating is at some point, I think you have to have a lot of ambition to be a teacher, and then at some point, you come out of your ambition. And I'm not quite sure how to negotiate that. But for the last 5 years, I've been interested in that I've been losing my ambition, and I can't figure out if that's a think of resignation or if that's sort of a coming of wisdom. What do you think, Bill, about ambition?
Well, I'm going to actually look at my phone right now and quote something that I read this very day about ambition, because it says it better than I could say it. And I'm just gonna keep blabbing until I find it. But basically, this is something that I will talk about if given an opportunity. Let me see, what is that called? Here we go. You know, I've had a lot of experiences in showbiz, and a lot of that is very celebrity and oriented, and it's, you know, it's part of the popular culture, and people get excited when they hear about it, and there's a lot of achievement. All these celebrities are always trying to do something. You know, they and many of them, even when they get tremendous success, it's not enough. But this is something that I've come to think about as I've gotten older, and I just had a talk last week with someone who's funding one of the projects that I'm involved in, and he's my age, and he's concerned. He says, life begins when you die. All he cares about now is his legacy. And to me, that is, wow, I couldn't disagree with him more.
Right.
And I couldn't really tell him how different I felt. But I'm going to read this thing today.
Please.
From, it's called Ego's Ambition versus Soul's Ambition.
Oh.
When we talk about ambition and the drive for success and the pursuit of excellence, it is crucial to discriminate between the soul's ambitions and the ego's ambitions, between the soul's drive for success and the ego's drive, between the soul's pursuit of excellence and the ego's pursuit. Now, I'm going to pause right here and just say in here, obviously, I mean, not obviously, to me it feels like when you're younger, it's the ego driving things, and as you get older, you get more attuned to the soul stuff. How does that play out? Now back to the thing. How does that play out in you? Maybe your ego wants to own $10 million and have a stunningly attentive lover and win awards for the work you do. Your soul, on the other hand, may be less interested in that stuff. Your soul might want to create elegant environments, or heal the wounds you suffered in childhood, or get into a dynamic relationship that teaches you how to love. Your soul might want to conquer your fears, or travel widely, or develop a close connection with nature. So here's the thing, if you want to develop an indomitable drive to create the destiny you want, make sure it's the destiny your soul yearns for. As long as you're obsessed with your ego's goals, you may never be able to access the core fuel of your ambition. There may, of course, be an overlap between the destiny your ego wants and the destiny your soul wants. If your soul wants to heal the wounds you suffered in childhood, such a longing could be compatible with your ego's desire to be rich and famous. Maybe you could write a best-selling book about how you healed the wounds you suffered in childhood. But your soul's vision must be primary, your highest priority. So, I mean, to me, I read that. It was this astrologer named Rod Brezhny who sent that out today. But to me, that's, as I'm at this age, turning 70 this year, that's all that matters to me. The achievements, I can talk about them. They're there. I can take some comfort in them. The fact that I was able to take Fred Wasser backstage to a Bruce Springsteen show. I mean, that's such a high achievement. I had even forgotten all about it. But now, yeah, just, you know, I'm enjoying this time of life. What I'm enjoying about this time of life, probably more than any time I've had, is the time to get to be around people as they are suffering and dying.
Oh.
That's a great gift, to be around in those times and to be able to give some comfort.
Oh.
And it also works in the work that I do with the homeless. It's just the ability to be present and offer, be more than a witness, but you know, I'm not going to change their lives. I'm not going to get them an apartment or anything like that, but just to kind of be there and be present and be aware, and those are important things to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I was thinking about ambition also, that it was a driving force that I never really acknowledged when I was younger, and perhaps my life, maybe I could have been more forceful in acknowledging it, but that would have been an uncomfortable life. But it is interesting to think about how much your life changes when you sort of give it up, almost like a monk giving up sex or something. Like right now, I don't feel like I have another academic book inside of me. That's interesting. And it's not particularly frightening or anything like that. I did get to say some stuff in a book. Nobody's perhaps read it. That's never, I guess that never motivated me much, whether people read it or not. But it was sort of a nice piece of gravy that people did every once in a while comment. But now I don't even have that much to say. The world's changing and I can't keep up with it.
Well, look, I think one of the things that I find about aging is that it's about letting go, shedding stuff, whether that stuff is, you know, photographs that you've been traipsing around for, or you know, Romanian music that you've been carrying around from apartment to apartment, getting rid of your LPs, or whether it's letting go of your hurts, letting go of your grudges, or just letting go of, at a certain point, the things don't really mean that much. The things that had meant things don't necessarily mean anything anymore.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it just sort of goes naturally. You don't have to really make a decision that they don't have meaning anymore. They just sort of, like, all of a sudden you wake up and they're losing their meaning. And it sort of becomes the same natural process as the process of coming to be ambitious in the world, the maturing process of having maturity. So it's very symmetrical, I find, both the gaining of ambition and maturity and the losing of it. Seems to be
the losing of maturity that we all do.
Perhaps I am losing maturity too. Yes.
Hey, you kids, get off my lawn!
Oh, and here's a topic that's a little bit off topic, but you never told me you had a free course bouzouki, and now you say you do.
No, I don't.
You don't have a bouzouki at all?
I don't have a bouzouki at all. I'm a bouzouki. You see, the one. That's something I could let go of by never getting it in the first place.
Okay, not me. I got my 3 bouzouki's.
No, I could handle a bouzouki. Let me tell you about the instruments I have now, just so.
Yes, tell us.
And it's a here. Just keep your hand from, in case that's making noise when you rub against it. So here's okay. So at a certain point, you know, they say that thing, you know, teach a man to give a man a fish he can eat today. Teach him how to fish he can eat his whole life. You know, there's the joke about music. You know, so how does it go? Something along the like, teach a man to play music, he can be happy. Teach him to collect instruments, and he can be miserable. I don't know, miserable. I don't remember. It's some meme about that, and he can be poor all his life. There is a thing about instruments that they're very, very. They have a soul, and each one has a unique soul, which for someone who likes to collect things on any level, whether they're a hoarder or whatever, it means that you develop a relationship with these instruments, and no one does them all perfectly, and they have a soul, and it's almost like a different instrument has a different song living inside of it waiting to be found. So, you know, there are instruments you kind of lust after or not. I think there's a thing about the things you wanted and you couldn't afford in high school that you were, you know, when you get older and you have money, then you do that, whether it's a motorcycle that you could never afford that your friend's older brother had, or whether it's a guitar that you saw somebody play and could never afford. But I realize now with instruments that we're just, you know, I've gotten instruments from people who have died, and I realize, oh, I'm just the steward of this thing until I'm gone. It's not mine. It's someone's gonna. Hopefully, I can give it to someone before I go. You know, make sure that it's in the right hands, rather than having the, you know, Judy say, well, which one do you want? To my friends, all just sitting around, you know, the women in Zorba, you know. Anyway, but yes, I don't have a bouzouki. I do have. I'm enjoying playing the ukulele now.
Okay.
I have a couple ukuleles. Someone gave me a baritone ukulele 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And now that I'm playing the little ukuleles, I'm recognizing how to play that one, and I'm enjoying that. But that doesn't sound like a ukulele, it sounds like a guitar. It's only got the first four strings, but it sounds like a guitar. This guy died recently, a friend of mine, or a guy I played music with, and I got one of his resonator guitars.
Oh, those are nice.
It was a very cheap one, but it has its own character that you can't make any other way. You could put pedals on for days, and it's basically like a poor man's steel guitar, and you can tune it. And this one is actually, the neck is round, so you can play it as a guitar as well as as a resonator. You know, I have too many basses. Unfortunately, they each do something that the others don't. Each one is unique in its way, and I can see getting rid of a couple of those soon. But yeah, the instruments are.
I've had more of your attitude in relationship to paintings. Every once in a while I get the urge to have a piece of art, and then I realize, but what's the point of having a piece of art? I'll just become the steward of it, and I'll just have to provide its passage through life, which I'm not quite equipped to do. So I think back in the 1970s, I could have bought a Rembrandt etching for the kind of money that I probably had at the time, but I decided it was too much responsibility. And even now I keep toying with the idea of buying a Hudson River School painting. But then again, I don't know why I would want to buy it. I enjoy them just having them sit in somebody else's gallery.
Well, I enjoy art that people I know made. I really enjoy that. There's a couple things we have that I...
By the way, the fountain has just come on.
Yes.
And we've been sitting here for half an hour and it hasn't come
were
on yet.
Happy until now. I wonder if we move over there. Look, he started it and then he just disappeared.
Oh, he started it.
A little rugrat started it.
So the little blue thing does it.
There's a button in it. There's a button in the middle of it. He started it and then, anyway. So, yeah, I like art that people I know made. We do have this Louise Nevelson that I feel kind of connected to. It's a small one. I did have a Keith Haring that I really liked that I took off the subway.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when we moved to LA, it was too hard to move it, and I left it to someone, and he sold it for way too little money, and I've never seen a penny of it.
Oh.
Now that there's a very big resurgence in him, not resurgence, but there's a huge show in LA at the Broad. But it was one of the, the thing about the Keith Harings is there was a lot of the same tropes, or a lot of the same iconographic images reconfigured, and this was one that I never saw otherwise. But I do have a somewhere. It was in our bedroom on 16 on 11th Street, and I do have a whatchamacallit, a Polaroid photo of it. So it was one of the subway ones. You know,
I remember.
so
I remember the one time in Los Angeles, I wanted to visit my friend Paul Greenstein, and he was in the middle of being interviewed by a journalist, but the photographer who took the photographs for whatever the journalism thing was just sitting there twiddling his thumbs. So he sees me as somebody he can monopolize. It was almost like a scene out of Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. He just grabbed me and he went on a long spew about how recently the Supreme Court had ruled that things you did as a freelancer, the rights reverted back to you. And then the punchline of the spew was he said, one day I went to MGM and they said, there's a kid in the basement we just assigned, we want you to take a photograph of him. So I went down there, I didn't like the kid, so I grabbed a couple of photographs. You know, and because of the Supreme Court thing, it reverted back to me. It happened to be James Dean with his feet on the desk featuring the Puma sneakers. And so Phil Stern, lovely man, grabs a poster out of his the trunk of his station wagon, hands it to me and said, would you like one? And I said, sure. And so he gets it, he signs it, he gives it to me. And I actually do have somebody that I'm definitely planning to give it to. A student I had a couple of years ago who, as soon as he heard that I had something from James Dean, he just went on and on. So at some point I'm going to dig up that student's email and say, you can have it. You got it.
make sure you don't wait too long.
Because why?
Well, students die sometimes before their teachers.
Oh no, please don't do that.
So anyway, did I tell you I didn't? This is a kind of off topic, but did I tell you that Phoebe stayed with us a couple months ago? You know, when they had the Angelopoulos exhibit.
Yes, you told me about that. So tell me more.
So you know, her house burned, and basically a lot of the archives burned in those big fires.
Oh
the house
God,
that they have
awful.
in Mati, anyway, during the time I was working with them, you know, his masterpiece is still considered to be the Thiassos, the Traveling Players. And in the office, they had all these old, well, let me show you a photo of this. I've got it on my phone. They had these posters and they were all in Greek. Anyway, I had kept some for myself.
Good.
As one does.
The one sheets, yes.
No, these were posters, but let me see. So that would have been probably in August. Let me see. When was
one
that?
sheet is a full poster.
Hang on, that was March. So that was in December. The show was. Oh look who that is. Hold on, I just saw somebody. Where did he go? Where did it go? Which way did it go? Which way did it go? Maybe it wasn't you. Okay, I thought someone looked like you. What is that? That's November. So this, I probably would have done this. Anyway, I found the poster, and I found two of these posters, so I gave her one. So I was able to, you know,
Fantastic.
basically I've been watching it all this time, you know, for her in a sense, holding on to it. So Paul Malcolm. I know it's in this thing that I sent to Paul Malcolm. Paul Malcolm was the UCLA film project. Okay, let me see. Let's see if it's shit. Oh wait, maybe it's there if I look down here. Rats, I can't see it.
Oh.
Okay, well anyway, it's a poster, but it's all in Greek. It had all the prizes, you know, all the prizes named in Greek. You know, first round, but it was a beautiful poster. Anyway, I was able to give that back to her. So Fred, what's your secret?
Well, not to have secrets.
No, what's your live by rule that works for you that has has been successful for you?
To take an interest, um, and to be local. I'm very much interested that I'm now feel and to keep returning to things from my youth. I mean, the trip that I just took to Europe was so much a return to the fact that my parents had introduced me to Europe, and now they're gone, but Europe is still there. Europe, of course, changes, but to keep returning. And the other one that I realized late in life is that I was always born a New Englander at heart. So now that I have a house in Connecticut, I definitely take a pleasure in all the Connecticut. The part of Connecticut I'm in was very oriented towards making things. It was the home of Stanley Tools. And even though Stanley Tools has, done the usual thing of offloading to China or whatever it goes, all those people are still there, and they all sort of know something about making things. And I never knew about making things. My father never was into making things, so he never taught me. And so it's sort of being in Connecticut and being a New Englander, it's picking up on that locality and what's specific to the locality. And in terms of New England, it's making wooden things and things out of metal also, but that I haven't gotten into.
You think they're still making things in there? Or
Yeah.
you think you're really responding to the history of,
Well, let's put it this way. You look up Craigslist and it's always a 90-year-old guy selling his old tools.
oh,
That's sort of fun, Otherwise, I wouldn't have no interaction with that 90-year-old guy selling. He worked all his life as a machinist somewhere in central Connecticut. It's sort of interesting. Central Connecticut seems to have a lot of these, what they call in German, Mittelstand businesses. Somebody else. I ran into somebody who makes seats for jumbo jet airplanes. But I mean, it turns out whoever makes that stuff is not themselves a big corporation. They're just a supplier to Boeing or whatever.
so medium-sized vendors or parts or contributors. So I really enjoy yard sales. Okay, I mean it's great. For me, yard sales are like it's one of the two things that I do that connect to my early anthropology studies at Columbia.
Okay, good, yeah.
One of them is documentary filmmaking, which is clearly anthropology, no matter
Right.
what you do with it.
Right.
But the other one is when you go to somebody's house and they pull out all their things for you to see, or some of their things, and you get to see their life. It's not just the object is connected to the life, it's the activity that object is connected to. Like you say, oh, these are sports people, or these are readers, or these people have junk. They just buy and buy and buy, and they have every latest gadget. Oh, these people are really into cooking. But in Southern California, we've been there since '88, and I'm on the west side, which is not far from Hughes, not far from where the aeronautical industry was there.
All right, Lockheed. All
So Lockheed and of course Douglas right in Santa Monica, and there were a lot of mechanics.
that. Oh, okay.
And so I've been to many yard sales where these guys, I mean, you'd go there and there would be a machinist, there would be a what do you call those things that you turn things on?
lathe.
A lathe. There would be lathes in their house, and they would, because sometimes they'd bring the work home or whatever. They would be, or commercial band saws and all the. So I have some great tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have some great tools, and this is partially from my father's training. My father was an engineer, but very much a self-taught mechanic thing, and he was a sloppy engineer. He did things kind of half-assed, but he never would shy at trying something, And this is before there was a YouTube video that told you how to
Right.
mix cement or
Right.
how to put on gutters. He would figure it out or learn or watch or ask. So that kind of can do. Anyway, my goal, I do have a garage, which, you know, if I lived in the city, I wouldn't. And my goal is there's always something to do around the house. And as much as possible is to fix whatever you have without having to go to the hardware store.
Yeah.
That you've got the tools, every tool you need. I've got a Sawzall, you know, I don't have more than I need. You know, I don't have a battery powered drill. Everything is, but I've got a variable speed drill. I've got a skill saw, you know, a circular saw. I've got a scroll saw. I've got 2 different kinds of sanders. But it's more than that, it's the hardware. Can I do it with the hardware I have? The other day, about 3 weeks ago, I had to fix a fence that I hadn't really paid any attention to, and it was really falling apart. And I managed, well,
Was
it
it
needed,
wooden? Wooden?
yeah, it was a wooden fence.
Oh.
It needed some slats that luckily I called a friend who had salvaged some old slats, because you don't want to put new slats in on an old fence.
No.
It looks, anyway, I had picked up a couple slats and I just managed to work on this thing and fix it and bring it back into shape, just based on things that I had lying around. And that's a good feeling.
No, that is a great feeling, and I guess that's what I appreciate about where I am. And I was trying to say it was specific to New England, but you contradict me. You say it's California also.
Well, but you won't find those tools anymore, right? The last guys are, and it's not even, you know, the ones that when I do see that now, it's not the old guys dying. It's the old guy died 20 years ago, the wife is left in the house, and then the wife dies and their kids sell it all. So you're pretty far away. You don't see those things like you used to. But yeah, I'm a sucker for a tool that I've never seen before, but maybe I could use it once.
No, I've become a sucker for tools, and it's something, as I said, in my case, it was the missing father. My father was great on advice about academia, but he had absolutely no interest in making things or working with tools. So,
well, the thing about buying an old tool is you know that someone else has used it and loved it and taken care of it.
Yeah.
You know that it's been through other hands.
But I do envy your father if he gave you that can-do spirit.
Well, he let me hurt smash my thumbs. So, yeah. Well, all my siblings are like that. My sister too. We got up. You know, she'll just pick up the paintbrush and just start doing it, and it's fun. It's actually one of the most fun I can have is working on that house in Catskill with one or more of my siblings on the same day. You know, at the same time, working on the same project. That's a lot of fun. Did that yesterday with Chris. So, anyway.
I'm a little talked out.
Yeah, we can stop. But what's your secret, Fred?
We'll have to do part 2. My secret is there's always part 2.
Oh, okay. Well, there's part 2 until there isn't.
Right.
All right. Do you have any parting, are those your parting words?
Those are my parting words, part 2.
Encore.